battle scenario with two ME-109s opposed by the P-51 Mustang, which you see taxiing here, and the RAF Spitfire, and we are showing a strafing attack on a ground installation by the 109s, and they're being seen off eventually by the Spitfires and the Mustangs. The 109 in the markings of JG-26 Schlageta, and bearing the staffel markings of a gentleman called Munchberg, who commanded the first staffel. It's in the camouflage of the Malta Mediterranean air war period. The Spitfire is a Mark 9 belonging to Ray Hanna, and it's marked at the moment in totally fictitious markings. CK were never actually used. They are in fact the markings of a recent television film called The Perfect Hero, and it's still wearing those marks. This is a Spitfire 9, virtually indistinguishable apart from the doubled radiators underneath from the Mark 5 and the Mark 1s and 2s of the Battle of Britain. In fact, the majority of the airframe was exactly the same. Sometimes very difficult to tell one from the other. The two Mustangs, P-51Ds, brought into action much later in the war. We've telescoped time a little bit to show you two battles in one. And here come our 109s on their first strafing run. Climbing away, turning back. These are Jagd bombers, fighter bombers, much used in tip and run raids from the end of the Battle of Britain. Racing back through the smoke to see what damage they've done, lining up for the second pass. And in comes the defending Spitfire, grim and familiar silhouette. Back come the 109s for the second strafe. Up again, close behind is the defending Spitfire. Mustangs in the distance still to come in. We go into the familiar pattern of the low-level dogfight. This is the Ray Hanna Spitfire, flown today by his son Mark, and its companion, Black 14, from an unidentified unit, belongs to the Charles Church collection and is being flown by Ray Hanna himself. We've got a father and son attack on this airfield. The Spitfire is being flown by Rolf Meum from the Norwegian vintage aircraft collection. Back they come through the smoke of their own bombing. There's Black 14 again. The two Mustangs that are involved, Dave Gilmore's being flown by Norman Lees, and Spencer Flax being flown by Rod Dean. Here they come now. This is the Dave Gilmore one. Norman Lees, a naval helicopter pilot. Both in the markings of 336 Fighter Squadron, 4th Fighter Group, the 8th Air Force in Britain in 1943-44. Spencer's made up as Sonny 8, the mount of the late Colonel Everett Stewart. The curious black and white spiral on the spinner of Black 14 was used either for recognition or to confuse enemy air gunners. Nobody's quite sure which. A set piece now of rather a different pattern. The display by the 4 Harvards of the locally based Harvard formation team, aided and abetted by their backup ship, the twin-engine Beech-18. Harvard 2 and a Harvard 4 taxiing out, followed by the easily recognized 0 type Harvard belonging to Gary Newman, becoming now as well known, if not better known, as a pilot as he was as a pop star. And the first 3 members of the team, joined this time by the second camouflaged Harvard, number 3 in the team order, Gary taking off on his own, a little behind the formation. I don't think they've worked out a process for getting 4 Harvards off at once at North Weald. And here's the whole team now, led by the Beech-18. 2 Harvard 2s, 2 Harvard 4s. And They separate now, the beach. Trailing smoke disappears to the hold while we come back to the main team. Number 1 leading in the Mark IV camouflaged Harvard is Tony Hutton, who started up the Harvard formation team many years ago. This is John Webb flying the Beech 18. Beautiful small transport, private owner twin, pre-war design from Walter Beech. Back to the team again. Andy Sefton in number 2, the United States Navy marked one, the silver and red markings. That's a Mark II, the oldest Harvard still flying in Europe. Number 3 is Lee Proudfoot, another father and son combination. His father, Hoof Proudfoot, flies with Ray Hanna, as does Lee. This is an ex-Swedish Mark IIB. There goes Gary Newman pulling up, rolling away out of the main formation. We shall see quite a lot of aerobatics from Gary in the course of this film. Basic Harvard's closed up again. Harvard, the first modern training aeroplane that the Royal Air Force ever possessed. It was one of the first aircraft from America purchased in any numbers. It started its service with the RAF back in 1938, a year before the war started. All 4 together closed up now in their basic box formation. 450 horsepower Pratt & Whitney Wasp in the Beech 18, 600 horsepower big Pratt & Whitney Wasp in the Harvard. Driving an ungeared propeller, so the tips go round very fast. In fact, they go supersonic, and it's that shockwave sound barrier noise from the propeller blades which actually gives the familiar rasping noise to a Harvard as it goes past. Back to Gary Newman now, trailing the smoke that he uses in the dogfight sequence, which we're not seeing today, when he shoots down the Beech 18 and gets clobbered by the goodies. Gary's been flying for several years now with the team. He's an excellent pilot. Took to aerobatics very happily. Taught by Hoof Proudfoot and Dizzy Addicott. Lazily around the top of a loop. Harvard, a basic trainer. Like most American aircraft of this period and before, very much more heavily powered than the equivalent British aircraft. Petrol was cheap then, and still is, compared to what it costs in Europe. Gary giving his usual very polished performance of aerobatics. The team starting to reassemble now, coming up towards their final maneuver, the twizzle taken from the Red Arrows. All these aircraft and their pilots belong to the squadron, which lives over the far side of the airfield here. Gary indulging in one last victory row before he tucks in and joins. The Beech 18, a very rare sight on the display scene. This one served with 52 and 353 squadrons in India. Over 400 supplied to the Royal Air Force, virtually all of them in the Far East, and those are the markings that this beach is bearing today. Back to the main team, running in now for their final maneuver, the twizzle. And there they go. Very nice piece of flying for the final maneuver from the squadron's Harvard team. Final close-up to Gary. At the beach. Into the circuit, gear down, here comes the first of the team Harvards, Anthony Hutton, and a final close-up shot of Gary Newman himself at the end of the display. in case you didn't recognize him. And now to